Okay, so next job is to squash this down and fit it on here. Now I'm going to squash that bigger image down because if I try and get that small image and expand it out, it's going to get all pixelated and you're going to lose quality. So you do need to think about that when you're picking your source images or taking them. You want to be working with the biggest files, the highest resolution or DPI that you can, so that you've got that flexibility. Okay. Now what I'm going to use for this, I'm going to go onto my layers here. There's the coast layer. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to transform it. Okay, now there's a few different transformations. I'm going to use scale. Now, one thing to watch for scale is that you can end up doing this. And the trouble with doing something like this is that you end up distorting everything a lot. Okay, did you see what I did? Or were you trying to read that email that came in? Let me show you again. What you're doing is if you move from the edge, you can change the vertical and the horizontal not in proportion. So the way around this is that when you do your transformation, your scale transformation, you hold the shift key and then you do it. And that restricts, see now I can't do that, so I can't make that mistake. So what I'm doing now is I'm just using I'm just looking at that picture and I'm looking actually at these buildings and trying to get them about the same size as these buildings in there. Okay, that gives me an idea of how well sort of artistically it's going to fit together. So let me just shift around with that a second and then we'll come. Right, so now excuse me, I'm happy with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that on top. So now it's there on top and I'm going to now place it somewhere on top where I can then do some deleting of things. So I'm going to want to have that in there. Let me just quickly just put it behind and see what that will look like. Oh, that should look pretty good. It'll be nicely by the beach. We'll have a nice beach view. Okay, so that's on top there. And now I'm going to use my magnifying glass and you see the little minus. If I hit Alt, that changes to a plus and I can zoom in. Okay, and now I'm going to use my eraser tool, and that has some settings up here where I can change the size of it here in terms of pixels and a few other different things like the shape of the brush, and then I can just start to get rid of the parts of the image on top that I don't want. Okay, now there's a whole bunch of, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Okay, I think this is the simplest way to sort of get started doing these kind of blending techniques. But some of the videos that I've put in the playlist will do these things in other slightly more advanced ways. Okay, this is, I think, probably the simplest and also probably the crudest as well way to do this, because all I'm doing is I'm just putting a photo on top of another and then deleting the bits that you don't need of that photo that's on top, so that it sort of reveals itself like this, and eventually it's a passable picture of the school by the beach. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is cut out all of this stuff by cropping the image. So I'm going to go to crop, and this is then actually going to cut everything else out of the picture. Okay, just like that. Hit enter, and that's cropped. Okay, now I'm not happy with this picture because, well, there's lots of very obvious edges and all kinds of things like that. But just take stock of what I'm just showing you here, because what you've just seen is combining two photos together to create some kind of fake image. And did you see how easy it was? Okay, it's very easy to do a kind of rough job on this, but it's very difficult to do a very good job on this. Okay, now we're going to leave this sort of here. You can play around a little bit and try and make those things better, but what your job is to look for tutorials that help you refine this process. So you've got the basics here. It's basically one photo, another photo, and then somehow blend them together by deleting bits of a photo, by changing something about those pixels. But what you can do and the levels that you can take it to, when you realize that you could zoom in to the level where you're editing individual pixels to blend them in, you can really do a seamless job, and that's the kind of standard that we're looking for. So have a play around, start with the basics, because if you don't get the basics right, you're never going to get good. So remember, find those two pictures and you're putting one on top of the other. You're using the transform tool to get it to be about the right size, and then just a simple eraser and then cropping it out to get your final product. Once you finish this, you need to go into the world of YouTube. I've put in some excellent links, okay, they're below this, okay, in that playlist. Have a look at those first, because those come with a sort of Mr. Ross recommendation stamped on them. Some are longer than others, some are shorter than others, and each one you do need to try and actually do those things that they're talking about in the video. There's no use just sitting there watching. You've got to do it. Okay? Anyway, enjoy Photoshop